There are some actors who personify a role to the point where you can't imagine anyone replacing them, like Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man.
I want one.
No.
Or Brie Larson.
I want to be the first me, not the next Tom Cruise. Thank you very much.
As an insufferable bint. I didn't think anybody could possibly top her interviews during Captain Marvel. But then again, just a few short years into the future, we've got Rachel Zegler.
I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Now, it's not all Rachel's fault. Brie did go and try and repair her reputation by doing in-depth intellectual videos on YouTube.
I don't want to do this. I never want to do this, but it's the most effective stretch.
Really won over the crowd with that one. But my opinion really changed of her when she was asked about Johnny Depp at the Cannes Film Festival. The interviewer clearly wanted her to stitch up Johnny Depp, but she didn't take the bait for whatever reason.
You'll see, I guess, if I'll see it, and I don't know how I'll feel about it if I do.
Journalists often like to see themselves above their own audience. I'm giving you the opinion you need to have, dear pleb. But they also love leading celebrities into attacking their own audience because they know it'll piss them off, who'll then come to their website to read about it. Now, there's multiple ways around this, with the easiest ones being to just play dumb.
You're asking me that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the correlation, or why me specifically.
Or to treat journalists with the respect that they deserve. Rachel, though, not that bright.
Snow White is going to have like a modern edge to her. Elaborate on that, tell us how she's going to sort of depart from who we've seen before.
Of course I'll tell you how we're changing the character and destroying the original. Let me lay it all out for you. What could possibly go wrong?
Told me before that your version of Snow White is different, more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
At this point, I'm not even sure what offends me more, the changes they're making, or the fact they're not even smart enough to try and hide it. How difficult would it be to go, well, this story was written in 1812, there are values within it that have resonated with people for 200 years?
Very blessed to be a part of something that seems to be very important to a lot of people, including myself.
And we don't even feel like we have the right to change it, because this is essentially cultural history, and I've barely been on this earth long enough to need to change my underwear. How am I supposed to comprehend what love is, let alone a long-lasting relationship?
Focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Mind you, it kind of makes sense in this one that the only way you could give a true love's kiss is when she's been unconscious for a year and unable to open her mouth. Now you could debate why. Is it the arrogance of youth, Hollywood, or having a bonus hole? But whatever it is, the Rachel Zegler Snow White story is the one that won't die. All these interviewers keep coming back to humiliate the production, which is pretty surprising considering how embarrassing the pictures of the movie were already.
And maybe she finds love, maybe she finds friendship, but really what's important is that she finds her own voice.
I really hope that's the movie's happy ending, because it's just going to make everyone want to leave. No, you can't have that. That's a love story and not about a miserable spinster. No, the new one is where they just let her sleep forever because everyone has a much happier life that way. But when most of the interviews that were surfacing now were done way back in D23, when all the news for that was coming out around September 9th, it shows the effects that the strikes are having, not just on Hollywood themselves, but on the news cycle. She said all of this stuff, but the story wasn't that big a deal because it got overtaken by other things that happened the next day and the next day, because Hollywood can't keep their mouths shut. Every day is just more stupidity to wash the old story out.
We are union through and through, all the way to the end.
I am Locutus of Borg.
So even if people would consider something a major problem, it's often just quietened down by whatever the next idiot is saying. That's not happening anymore, though, and stories are coming out from before that people just didn't notice or didn't get the attention that they deserved, which raises the question of how many more skeletons are in the closet.
Crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
For instance, she's already been telling contradictory stories about her feelings about Snow White.
Be very important to a lot of people, including myself.
I know you're a longtime Disney fan. How does it...
Oh look, I'm a huge fan of it, it's very important to me, but I also want it to be destroyed and entirely changed. This is something I've enjoyed since I was a kid, and the morals are horrific.
Big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. Weird.
At first it was all, oh, I love Snow White, I was such a big fan of it, I'm a huge Disney fan. Which quickly turns into, it's 85 years old, it needs to change because it's got a stalker in it.
That's gaslighting. That's what it is.
It's a very strange name for a multi-millionaire prince who saves her from a living hell. We can't be showing people that, it's disgusting. We've really got to make up our mind whether we love it and it's really important to us and must be preserved, or whether we hate it and it's really scary and we only watched it once.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Be very important to a lot of people, including myself. And how does it...
At this point, she doesn't just need a rich prince to come and save her. She needs a marketing executive to come along and tell her to shut her gob. But it's interesting how someone can hold either two contradictory contradictory viewpoints in their own head at the same time, or how their opinion randomly changes so quickly. At that point, is it their opinion, or is it the PR that they've been told to say? Because as we've seen in the strikes, Hollywood has a very strong antibody response. If you say anything even remotely standing out from the hive mind, you will get crushed in a matter of days. The best example of this is Stephen Amell, who dared say something even slightly against the union, where he called the strikes myopic and a reductive negotiating tactic, which is 100% accurate. It's the highest escalation you can do, and so once you've done it, there isn't really anywhere else you can go. There's nothing to negotiate. You either get what you want, or the entire industry shuts down, and your jobs are gone anyway. That's not a business relationship dealing with people in good faith. And he said all this seemingly knowing you'd be in trouble, because he made sure to give the caveats of, I support my union, I do, I stand with them. And he said he was only against this specific act, and largely seemed to be out of frustration, because he'd just launched a new show, and he couldn't talk about it. Not being able to market the shows that you've already made, being paid for, and want to see as a success, not just for your own money, but for the advancement of your future career, and out of a sense of pride for your own work. You're not even allowed to talk about them, because some prat in an office somewhere has decided that you can't. I'd be frustrated as well.
How does it...
But the funny thing is, these articles talking about his statements came out on July 31st at 4:35 p.m. And yet just over 5 hours later, he was already having to roll it back and clarify his statement with lines like, when you see me on a picket line, please don't whip any hard fruit. Does that sound like somebody who's clarifying a statement because it was taken out of context? Or because he thought the principles of what he was saying was wrong? Or does it sound like he's scared of a mob? Having to say that his support for the Actors Union was unconditional, I don't know why. What happens if they actually turned into the Borg and started to take over the Earth?
Locutus, a Borg.
Would they be conditional then? Things should have conditions, mate. It's called having standards. But he changed it to, of course I don't like striking, but we've got to do it. I was speaking for over an hour. Our leadership is doing an incredibly complicated job, and I'm so grateful for them. You know, I was emotional and frustrated, but from an intellectual perspective, I can 100% stand behind them. Please don't hit me with fruit. And then under 2 weeks later, he was on the picket line himself with that face. That's a face of a man who's worried where people are going to stick the sign. My off-the-cuff words support is clearly contradictory to my true feelings, and my emphatic statement that I stand with my union came across with all the sincerity of a battered wife. The words that I said clearly contradict my actual feelings. Please don't attack me. So when you've seen how fast Hollywood will crush somebody who says something even slightly out of line, doesn't it then go to show that Rachel Zegler and her contradictory comments about Snow White were obviously in line with what they wanted her to say?
Be very important to a lot of people, including myself.
I know you're a longtime Disney fan. How does it...
Her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part.
Weird. How does it...
Yeah, it's not just Stephen Amell who can say things which are clearly contradictory to his true feelings. Apparently, Rachel Zegler can dislike Snow White and find it incredibly important to her simultaneously.
How does it...
And I think the idea that Hollywood could actually be wanting her to say this stuff is even worse, because it means that Disney is actively destroying their own IPs, and they're enjoying it. In fact, it's worse than that. They could destroy it in private and just release it and watch it flop, but they actually want to market it based off its own destruction. You can hire a bad employee who does a bad job and then gets fired, but hiring people who want to take down your company and brag about it is, I think that's pretty new for the modern era. I mean, I've heard of the customer is always right, but at Disney it should be, if anyone opens their mouth, do the opposite, because I don't think you can explain this away by incompetence, simply because incompetence wouldn't be so proud of it.
Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power and how to find her own agency. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
It's really wonderful, and it's yummy, and it feels really delicious in my heart.
And that's why these strikes have backfired on people, because as you take a break, well, now all of your actions can be looked at in more detail. And it wasn't really a problem when the writers did it themselves, because nobody really cared about them. Very few of them have any name recognition, and they're basically the ones to blame for all the bad writing and characters in the first place.
Health workers taking your trades. Workers who don't sleep, don't tire, don't age.
Starvation wages.
But the WGA seemed to recognize this, and there was always, why aren't we getting more people on the picket line? And then the actors strike came in, and suddenly a load of people did.
Anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 or 8,000 an episode.
Starvation wages.
So now people were paying attention to you. It's not as if you had very strong arguments to begin with.
Really wish that we could get it to you guys, but we need to stand on the right side of history.
They can't stand the scrutiny of attention. And this isn't just a case of actors coming out and saying something stupid, but you're trying to get people on side while simultaneously being impossible to empathize with. For instance, there are some things that you'd never wish on anybody, and one of the worst things that can happen to you is that you lose your house. Your $1.4 million house, due to the financial impact of the actors' strike.
Starvation wages.
He's in a $1.4 million house, he missed one paycheck, and he's got to sell it. I'm not sure if that's Hollywood's fault. He revealed that he lives check to check, and 2 of his upcoming projects have been scrapped. How are you living paycheck to paycheck in a $1.4 million house?
Like we're the victims. Feel bad for us. That's what that is.
The life of an artist until you make enough money, which I haven't yet, is still check to check. In his 4,500 square foot house, I don't even know how big that is. Okay, we've got some mock-ups of 4,500 square foot houses. Here's a 4,500 square foot one. And you want sympathy that you're living paycheck to paycheck in a house that size. Yes, no one can empathize with you because you live in an entirely different world. Oh, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to go on strike for another month. The Batcave will have to wait. If your butler is handing you financial papers when you haven't worked for a month, have you ever considered the problem might be how you manage your money rather than Hollywood? Because you seem to have plenty of it, you just don't know how to not spend it.
I take responsibility.
Maybe that sounds great.
Getting the actors to go out and talk about the strikes, well, that's really backfired. Not just because of the actors which disagreed with them and then had to be broken publicly because you don't go against the union. This is the almighty evil empire. What are you doing? All opposition to the mighty hive mind fist must be crushed.
We are union through and through.
Yeah, congratulations, Hollywood. Setting up that union was a great idea, wasn't it? But when you've got people coming out and talking about losing their homes, even though they should be worth millions of dollars, or talking about what they deserve.
I deserve to be paid for every hour in a dress.
You're never going to get the public on side, not just because you've been attacking them and humiliating them and insulting them for years at this point.
Just sickened me to my stomach. You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
The Star Wars fan base really seems to be the most toxic.
Not just because you're incredibly arrogant and egotistical, considering all you do is stand around on set for 12 hours a day and then lie a bit.
I deserve
Union power! Union power!
How does it...
But because you are so exceptionally well paid that we've reached a point where you think you should be able to work on a couple of movies a year and get a full-time income. When you're complaining about getting paid $1,082 a day, that's the point where you shut up.
7,000 or 8,000 an episode. Maybe that sounds great. Say I cobble together 2 or 3 guest stars a year.
So it's not acceptable behavior. It is embarrassing.
Then I'm not even sure if you realize that Hollywood can actually fail. Other countries are making TV shows, much better TV shows. All the best stuff I've watched over the last 2 years is basically about a career as it is. And you're competing against so many more other things, so many more people. So it's not just you versus television, but you've got YouTube, streamers. And some of these streamers are getting $100 million contracts. But you want to know the interesting thing about streamers? Even when they get $100 million contracts, you can still actually relate to them. They're involved with the audience all the time. There's a live stream of chat literally beaming into their eyes all the time they're streaming. And if they fall out with their audience for whatever reason, that money vanishes immediately.
You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
How does it...
This builds into the job a recognition that they are the people that made you. They are the only reason you're even there in the first place, and they allow you to be there at their whim. This is something that Hollywood has long lost. They think, when I become an actor, that's it, I'm amazing now, it's all about me. It doesn't matter if I destroy an IP or piss off the audience. I don't have to listen to the common plebs. Because unlike YouTube or streaming, where the boss is the audience, it's the people in the chat. Hollywood doesn't see their boss as the audience. They see it as the studios, as the executives, which is why they're so scared to step out of line.
I take responsibility.
Because they don't see it as the audience who has the ability to take their job away, but the executives. And so they will capitulate to their whims the moment they're told to. And maybe they're right. Maybe it is. Maybe no matter how popular someone is with an audience, if you don't say what the executives want, you'll never get a job in Hollywood. But doesn't that show there's a problem? A major problem? Something rotten at the core of Hollywood that would definitely be worth fixing, which is far more worth striking over than what you are. Because that attitude kills your industry. So none of you will have any jobs while giving the finger to the audience because they think they're untouchable.
The most toxic.
And have no idea that what they're paid is astronomical compared to the people they're complaining to.
I deserve...
And I don't think the audience would have a problem with you living in a $1.4 million house. All they want is a bit of humility and to acknowledge that actually you've got a really cushy job, even if it is part-time. But it really, if you wanted to get people on side, it wasn't to get big names to go on and give speeches about how they're the Borg. The only thing you needed to have done is make good content, entertain the audience, and not destroy IPs that have lasted for a couple of 100 years. All because you think you know better than the evil people you're selling your movies to. Because if the customer's always right, then what does that make Hollywood? But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.